Hi there, I'm David Mallette. I work with Management Consultants for the Arts. We are a boutique specialty consulting firm. We work only with arts and cultural organizations across the country and across disciplines. And we do recruiting work, we do planning and organizational development work. I tried to get into arts administration in my early 20s, and I just couldn't find the right entree. So I ended up in sales, and in a completely unrelated field. I did that for a couple of years, and then through a friend, I was able to secure a sales job at the Alley Theater in Houston, Texas, a large regional theater, and they took a chance on me, and I guess in one way I took a chance on them. I knew how to sell, and that was my sort of side door entry into arts administration. While I was at the Alley, I ended up being asked to take over their operations, facility operations. That was 2 years of misery. It was not a particularly fun job, but it did teach me a lot about what's required to run a large facility in a performing arts institution. So it was an invaluable experience. While I was there, because I was an up-and-comer, young, I was the guy that sort of took on any odd task that didn't fall neatly into somebody else's job portfolio. One of those was being road manager for some bus and truck tours that the Alley did while I was there. That gave me a lot of road experience, and from there I took a job with Houston Ballet, and as their company manager, with the person that was responsible for getting performers from point A to point B, and a lot of other responsibilities in that job as well. And I stayed there for 3 years and began to learn about new production and touring in a much broader way than even what I had done at the Alley Theater. And then in 1990, I was asked to be the executive director in Fort Worth, what was then Fort Worth Ballet, what is now called Texas Ballet Theater, and stayed in that post from 1990 to 2005. So there are essentially two types of performing arts organizations. There are presenters and there are producing organizations. Their titles are pretty much self-explanatory. A presenting organization doesn't really produce any work, it presents the work of other organizations. A producing company does produce. It produces its own work, like a theater company or an opera company or a ballet company. Presenters can take a number of different forms. It may be a standalone 501c3. It may own its own venue or simply lease from other venues. A lot of presenters operate under the aegis of colleges and universities. There are dozens, if not hundreds, of these types of presenters around the country. The structure varies, but generally the presenting organization will have its own board. Even if it's not a fiduciary board, it will still have its own board that will serve as an advisory and fundraising functions. But then, because it's operating under the aegis of the university, it still has to operate under the governance of the university board of directors. A major category of presenting organizations are performing arts centers, or PACs. PACs own and operate their own venues. Examples of that here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area would be Bass Performance Hall or Windspear Opera House. They operate their own venues as well as present seasons that they put together and market. Producing companies do exactly what their name says. They produce work, as I said before. Dance companies, theater companies, opera companies, symphony orchestras, all of these are producing companies. Parenthetically, many producing companies are also presenters in that many of them present themselves. Most of them actually present themselves, at least in their own home seasons. So they are in effect doing both of those functions. Although there are some producing companies that don't present their own work, that only operate under the aegis of presenting organizations. That would be the minority of those. Presenters do generate work on occasion. Actually, in recent years, more and more, they might commission a new work from a dance company or from a theater company that they have a relationship with. For example, New Orleans Ballet Association, which is a dance presenter in New Orleans, recently commissioned a new work from the Trey McIntyre Project. Trey McIntyre Project is a producing company, dance company, located in Boise, Idaho. So that work premiered in New Orleans and now will subsequently tour around the United States. Sometimes presenters will also partner with producing organizations by helping to fund the upfront costs of a new production or a new work. And then the presenting organization has the ability to premiere that work on their own season. One of the biggest differences in a producing company operational model, within producing company operational models, is whether or not they have a resident company. For instance, the symphony orchestra has a huge coterie of musicians. Dance companies are also a resident company model because they're going to have resident company of dancers. Some theaters, although these days it's not the norm, but some theaters will have resident companies as well. Back in the early part of the 20th century, resident companies were pretty much the norm. Now it's more rare for a theater to have a resident company. There's also a hybrid model. Dallas Theater Center is an example of this, where they have a small resident company, a small company in residence that they use for their productions, and then other actors are jobbed in. Most theater companies do not use the resident company model. In other words, they're auditioning and bringing in different actors, different performers for each production. Opera companies are the same way. They're going to be bringing in different singers, at least for the lead roles, for each production that they do. Even in some dance companies, not all dance companies operate under a resident company model, especially in the contemporary and modern dance world. They may job in different dancers for each project that they do, and in essence, they will hire a pickup company for a particular project. That's what these days. That's what Bruce Wood Dance Project is doing. Producing organizations will have the same type of governance structure. They're going to have a volunteer board of directors, as outlined in the IRS code. Generally, that's going to be a 501c3. So from an operational standpoint, presenters and producers will have many of the same functions from an administrative and operational standpoint. They're going to have audience development, marketing, sales. They're going to have development, fundraising. They're going to have some level of production expertise. They're going to have some operational expertise as well. Where things differ the most, as we talked about earlier, is with on-site resident performers. Many producing companies, especially dance and orchestra, are going to have those. Additionally, there's going to be artistic staff in a producing company, and where you would not have that in a presenting organization, except to the degree that someone in a presenting organization must do the programming, and so they are therefore capturing that artistic function, but they are not overseeing a group of performers and directing them in their day-to-day rehearsals. Finally, producing companies tend to have larger production staffs than presenters. Presenters will have production staffs, but producing companies are going to have scenic staff and wardrobe, costume staff, lighting designers, that type of thing that you would not necessarily have, at least not to the degree, in a presenting organization.